Welcome to Season 2 of ACC Stars, Where Are They Now? I'm Erin Summers. I'm a sports broadcaster that's covered the Atlantic Coast Conference for a very long time, and I grew up a fan. I've always been curious about what players do after we obsess over them in college. This podcast answers that question. Each week, you'll hear an interview with a former ACC athlete. We'll find out everything they've been doing since playing in college. Thanks for listening. Let's jump in to ACC Stars, Where Are They Now? This week, I'm joined by former UNC forward Matt Doherty. Doherty started on the 1982 national championship team and boasts over 1,000 points, 400 rebounds, and 400 assists in his college career. Doherty went on to coach at his alma mater and has recently written a book on leadership. Here's our conversation.
Well, Matt, I really appreciate you joining me. Just first off, how are you doing this morning?
Doing fine. Yeah, doing great.
And where are you calling in from today?
Mooresville, North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte.
Is that your current residence? How long have you been there?
We've been in Mooresville on and off since 2003. After I left Chapel Hill as a coach, we moved here. My wife's from Concord, and I like the Charlotte area. And we moved here, and then I went on a coaching journey again. And then after we left Dallas, we came back here. So we've been here 10 years now, I think, since 2012.
Yeah. You mentioned North Carolina. You mentioned your coaching journey. I want to take it back before all of that. And just what got you started in basketball to begin with?
Oh, gosh.
Maybe back to New York when you were growing up?
Yeah, no, fourth grade. I remember playing CYO basketball in fourth grade. Brian Moynihan and Tommy Neller are my coaches. We had white T-shirts, undershirts, and we took the magic marker back then. I mean, there was no Sharpie. It was a magic marker that stunk, and put our numbers on the shirts, And then my dad signed me up for basketball camp, Gus Alfieri's AllAmerican camp. And I just really loved it. Most kids in my neighborhood grew up playing baseball. My dad was a minor league pitcher. But the thing I loved about basketball was you could get better on your own. You didn't have to have somebody else there to throw the ball to you. Catch the ball like football or baseball. And so I could just lose myself in the game in my driveway or the park was 3 blocks away. And that was a big part of my life, the Prospect Park.
You got a lot better on your own. You became a McDonald's AllAmerican. You won a state championship in basketball. What was it like having those kind of accolades at such a young age?
Yeah, the thing about I wrote a book called Rebound, From Pain to Passion, and a lot of I talk about is you have a ball and you have a dream, and I think like it's so cool and so powerful to dream, and then you can chase your dreams, and so I had that ball, I had the dreams. I saw the players up close that I wanted to be like at this park. There were great players that played in the ABA back then, the New York Nets. I mean, guys like Dr. J would come over, great high school players. We had a guy at my high school, Malcolm Caesar, who was a great player. Just some of the best players on Long Island would play at this park. So I got to see that up close and see what that was like and, mimic their moves. And, then I had the Knicks and the Nets, and I got to watch them on TV. And so I had great role models and then people that would push me and encourage my dreams, like Bob McKillop, my high school coach, who's now at Davidson. And I was just blessed to grow up in East Meadow, blessed to grow up near the park and have people that supported my dreams.
So you're sitting there at the park and Dr. J walks up and is playing basketball. How cool is that as a young kid growing up, wanting to be like him?
Yeah. I actually, full disclosure, never saw Dr. J at the park, but he came to the park. I was not there when he was there, unfortunately. But the guys that I got to see up close that were the legends was a guy, Kevin Joyce, who was an Olympian. He was on the 1972 Olympic team, played at South Carolina, played for Frank McGuire at South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And I just remember him walking in the park, and like the coolest thing, Aaron, he was wearing Chuck Taylors walking into the park, but he was carrying his Adidas Pro models. And he got to the bench and switched out. And I'm like, man, that's cool. and even back then we were sneakerheads. It's just our options were very limited. You could go with Chuck Taylors in white or black, and you can go with the Adidas Pro models. Maybe Puma, because those things really stick. And then I was playing with him. I was always like the little guy hoping to get in the game and being there early to get picked. And they picked me, and we were playing 3-on-3, and I was on his team. Like I couldn't breathe. And then like he passed me the ball and he said, shoot it. Like, how cool is that? Like Kevin Joyce passed me the ball and said, shoot it. Like, so then you think of your impact when you get older on the young kid that's playing in the park with you, mm-hmm. and how little comments, little words of encouragement can really spark that dream and that excitement in a young person.
Somebody that I'm sure you learned a lot from along the way was Dean Smith, your coach at North Carolina. You had a lot of really good players around you and a legendary coach. What are some of the moments that you remember most from your time there?
Well, you talk about in awe. Like I remember when he came to my house for recruiting. Here's a guy who just coached the Olympic team to the gold medal in 1976, had just been to the Final Four in 1977. And now he's at my front door to recruit me. And how relaxed he was, how confident he was. He made my family comfortable. And then playing for him, I refer to him on a daily basis. I'm an executive coach now. I work for Vistage, which is an executive coaching firm. And, I work with CEOs, and I plan a practice. I plan practice, and I use an emphasis of the day and the thought of the day. That's what he did. I quote him often. He would say, praise the actions you want repeated. We talk about culture and business. He was cutting edge, legendary, like people that are trying to incorporate culture in their organizations use the things that he did with us on a daily basis to get to create the behavior, the winning behavior that he wanted in his organization. So there's really not a day that goes by where I don't quote him, lean on those experiences, think back to some moments where, I played or when I was coaching there, and we would talk about basketball.
A very impactful person, to say the least, did a lot for the game of basketball and for a lot of people. One of the memories I'm sure that you have is winning the national championship alongside some players like Michael Jordan and James Worthy, guys that we all grew up watching. That year and that run, especially after losing the year before at that stage, how special was that?
Yeah, a lot of things go through your mind as you talk. I remember being in the locker room after losing the year before to Indiana in the finals, and Al Wood saying, hey, you've got 3 more years of this. He was a senior. And we had the nucleus of the team. Al was the All-American, the nucleus of the team coming back with James, Sam Perkins, Jimmy Black. And I was a 6th man that year. So I was fortunate to go in the starting lineup, and then Michael came in and kind of replaced Al to a certain degree. James was just unbelievable. James Worthy was, I hope people don't forget what a great player, great talent, great guy James was. There's nobody like him ever, I don't think. Maybe Chris Webber, that could do the things that James could do. And he was such a great teammate. So we were very confident. We knew what we could do, and we were fortunate enough to do it. We overcame, the things that would have stopped us would have been injury or foul trouble. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, we didn't have a heavy dose of either one during the season.
Looking back on what college basketball was like then, your time coaching, the landscape that it is now, how have you kind of adjusted as college basketball has adjusted? What are your thoughts on the current game?
Yeah, I don't like it. I mean, I know I sound like the gray head that I am. And I'm the old guy that says, well, that 2017 team that Carolina had that won the championship, like none of those guys would have started on our team. Like there's no way you can compare that team to our team. And I just, that's the way I think, and I'm sure my teammates think. I just, the state, the grassroots basketball has, I think, hurt it. The transferring, the one and done, it makes it hard. It makes it hard to love college basketball. And maybe that's just me, but I know people of my generation, a lot of them feel the same. The name, image, and likeness thing, I have no problem with that, actually. Now that it's here and it's upon us, I think that's a great thing for a player. Because I remember walking into a bookstore and one day in Chapel Hill when I was a player, and I see my jersey on sale on a what do you call them, a dummy or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, that's my jersey. And then immediately I thought, wow, that's my jersey. And, they're selling my jersey. And so I think it's really cool that these kids are getting an opportunity. I thought, well, maybe it'd be a distraction, it'd be hard to manage, whatever. I think this is a great thing for the kids. And they get to understand, like to me, if I'm an administrator or a university, I'm turning this into a class. Because this is a life lesson that these kids get to learn. How do you set up an LLC? How do you deal with marketing? Because I was a business major. You read about it and you're like, okay, you take the test and you move on. Now you're getting stuff that sticks, that's real, that can transfer to your future. So I think this is great. And some kids that may not be star players might be able to make some money, in a creative way, and it may launch a career for them. Like, they do a video or they create an app or, a line of clothing. And so I think it's really cool from that regard. But I just, the underbelly of college athletics hasn't been great, with the one and dones, the money, the cheating, the NCAA being so out of touch with the athlete. I think it's really hard to coach. I've thought about going back into coaching several times and tried to, and I think God has closed the door and in some cases slammed the door. And, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, thank you. But, most coaches I know, it's just a really, if they can go to the NBA, they're going to the NBA. It's just not a enjoyable experience. So I think the money's so good, it's hard to turn it down, and you're kind of, it's a drug. It's a drug for most people. It's my drug. I'm in rehab right now. If I had an opportunity tomorrow, I'd probably do it, but it's not the most healthy thing to do as a profession.
Well, the way you got into coaching, it started after your great career in college, over 1,000 points, over 400 rebounds, over 400 assists. Only the second player in ACC history to do that at the time.
That's right.
So
You've done your homework, Erin. You've done your homework.
Yeah, you had a very good career. And then what were your options after school?
Yeah, well, everyone's dreams to play in the NBA.
Yeah.
And one of the worst days of my life was the 1984 draft, when I thought I'd be drafted in the first 3 rounds. And I wasn't drafted till the 8th round, Erin. They don't have 8 rounds anymore, as you know. They have 2 because there aren't very many good players after the first 2 rounds. So, you know, you look at that, you say, oh my gosh, the game I love is not loving me back. So I was like, screw you, I'm going to get rich on Wall Street. And so I worked on Wall Street for 4 years and I was miserable. I quit my job, moved to Charlotte thinking I was going to get in the real estate business, and ended up getting fell into coaching. I was doing the radio at Davidson. I was coaching an AAU team, and my star player was Jeff McGinnis, who ended up being a point guard at North Carolina. And I loved the coaching. You know, I was like, wow. And then ironically, Davidson had the coaching change and hired Bob McKillop, who was my high school coach.
Yep.
So I joined his staff, and that's how it happened.
And you go from his staff to somebody that you played with in Roy Williams at Kansas. You spent quite some time there experiencing being an assistant now to Coach Williams, somebody that you grew up with at Carolina. Kind of what were some of the lessons that you learned from that time?
Yeah, I think the thing that I learned was the behind the scenes of the Carolina system. You know, I knew it as a player, but now I got to look behind the curtain and say, okay, why? Why did you do what you do? How did you do it? You know, how did you look at film? How did you grade film? How did you handle the academics? How did you handle recruiting? And so now I got to I would say to ADs, I got my fingerprints on the blueprints to the Carolina system. And I could put that any university. That was my selling pitch. And so, you know, that was just a wonderful experience. And being at Kansas, you talk about love of basketball, and, you know, James Naismith was their first coach. I mean, Dean Smith played there. Yeah. Adolph Rupp played there. I mean, that really is, if you look at the college basketball tree, Kansas is at the top. No offense to the ACC or North Carolina, but that's where it really started.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense the way that you lay it out. You know, nobody in the ACC can, I don't think, take too much offense to that. But you did get your first head coaching opportunity in Notre Dame, an ACC team now. That first year, I mean, the only year that you coached there, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a head coach?
Well, I think changing the culture. I think that, you know, there's a reason there was a coaching change. Either a coach leaves because he was so successful and went on to retirement or another job, or they lose, and there's a reason they lose. And I think there was systemic issues in the program that was, you know, systemic from the university. It was just they didn't care as much about basketball, and they needed a cultural change. And I was that change agent, and I don't mind being that change agent. I think that's the energy and the vision that I brought with my staff, and we impacted change right away.
And maybe that's why taking over a program at North Carolina, getting the opportunity to be a head coach there, was a different type of challenge, because Guthridge had established his program and the way that he did things there, and it was his choice to retire and leave. What are some of the takeaways you have from those 3 years that you had at Carolina?
Yeah. How much time do we have, Erin?
I mean, we can sit here all day.
Yeah, I wrote a lot of this in the book, Rebound from Pain to Passion. Here's the trick at North Carolina. It was a rebuilding job, but no one knew it except me.
Okay.
Yes, there was years of success from Frank McGuire to Dean Smith to Bill Guthridge, but the foundation was weak and the program was heading this way. And, maybe that's why Roy Williams didn't take it. He was slated to take it, but he had a team he took to the Final Four, and he was getting ready to take them again with players, that I helped recruit. So, Bill Guthridge was there 3 years, but the talent level is dipping. And so I come in and I know that, right? That's my job. I'm in the pipeline. I know the pipeline. I'm a recruiter. I saw the talent base and I'm like, okay. So my comments to the AD was that this is a rebuilding job. I need, my first year will be good. My second year, we won't. My third will be rebuilding. Are you tough enough to get through that with me? Mm-hmm. And, at that point, they had to have me really, because they couldn't have hired, Roy turned it down, didn't hire Larry Brown. George Karl couldn't get out of his contract with the Bucks. Eddie Fowler was getting ready to retire from South Carolina in a few years. He didn't want to take on that challenge, I guess. So they really didn't have anybody else in the Carolina family that they could go to. Mm-hmm. So, I think I was told some things that, yeah. And then I was told you could bring your staff with you. I'm like, okay, if I can't bring my staff, I'll stay at Notre Dame.
Yeah, but that didn't go over very well.
Didn't go over very well, Aaron. And that's my inexperience. The other thing, just think about the conversation we're having today is July 2nd. And I don't know if I should have admitted that on this documentary. But it's July 2nd. I got the job July 11th. Okay. Mm-hmm. July 11th. Hubert is taking over for Roy Williams, and he got that job in early April. And he was an assistant there for 9 years. So the transition from Roy to Hubert, fairly seamless. He brought in a couple of his assistants. But this transition from Bill Guthridge to me on July 11th,
yeah,
I was bringing in my own staff. We already started recruiting at Notre Dame for July. And then all of a sudden I go out the next day with the Carolina polo on to recruit for North Carolina. And I've got assistant coaches and families trying to move from South Bend, Indiana to Chapel Hill. I didn't have time to really get to know my players like I did when I was at Notre Dame and started in April, mm-hmm. where you could be around them, you could work them out, you could go to lunch with them, you could have conversations with them. I didn't really start that till August when school started. That was a traumatic change for me and my staff and the Carolina players. And, I think that if Coach Guthridge would have retired in April, it would have been a different story, because then we could have planned the staff better. It wouldn't have been a rush. Maybe I would have said, okay, I could have had a couple options. I'll bring my staff with me, but I'll keep the previous staff and we'll just figure out a hybrid and make sure we protect everybody. Or I won't keep the staff. I'll bring in and adopt the previous staff. I won't bring my staff with me, which wouldn't have happened, but those would have been the three options. At that time, it was so rushed, I didn't have great options. So I said, I could bring them or not. And if I can't bring them, I'm staying at Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. But that was not well received at all.
Yeah, and it kind of trickled over into your time there. But you've mentioned your book a couple of times with Rebounds, and I think that the moment that you left North Carolina, you had a decision of, were you going to continue to coach, and how are you going to pivot or rebound, as the title of your book says, and how did you do that?
Yeah, it's Kevin White, who's just retiring at Duke
Yes.
as the athletic director, was the athletic director at Kansas at Notre Dame when I left. Great guy, good friend. And when I lost my job at North Carolina, he was one of the early calls to me. He called me and said, Matt, take the high road. There's less traffic up there. This is so easy to be angry and get hijacked emotionally and say things that you'll regret. So I tried to take the high road. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to take a year off. I knew I wanted to do some TV. I knew I wanted to catch my breath and figure out next steps. So I did TV. I moved to Mooresville. I was doing some private business, and I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed the TV. I enjoyed the private business. I enjoyed the freedom and the lack of stress of not coaching. But I was only like 40, 41, something like that. So I'm like, I got to coach again. And I went on a leadership journey, and the things I learned in leadership, I wanted to try to put into place. So that's when I went back, and I had to take Florida Atlantic because the damage done at University of North Carolina was so impactful that I couldn't get a top Power 5 job. Although I did get an offer from St. John's, and they kind of pulled the plug on that. So I had to take Florida Atlantic University, which was one of the worst jobs in the country at the time.
Yeah. How do you swallow your pride and kind of just attack it?
You want to coach. There's only 355 jobs. And you're like, okay, I want to coach. Do I love coaching, or I love the fame of
notoriety?
Coaching?
Sure.
And, I've fallen off the cliff. All right, how do you get back up? Well, one job at a time, right? One program at a time. And so I took the job, and I remember the first day, the press conference, I went to my office and I pulled the drawer out of my desk to get a pen, and the whole desk drawer fell in my lap, pens flying everywhere. And I started to cry, and I'm like, what happened to my career? And I went into a depression. I mean, I didn't admit it at the time publicly, but I admit it now. I went into a depression that, why? What did North Carolina do to me? What, God, why did I deserve this? And it was dark. I was in a dark place. But remember the first exhibition game, and we were displaced because of a hurricane, and we're playing some community college, and there might have been 100 people in the stands if they were tops, 100 people in the stands. And I remember going into the locker room during warm-ups with my staff, and one of them was Rex Walters, who played at Kansas for Roy Williams and me. And I said, who here cares that there's only about 100 people in the stands? And to a man, we said, we don't care. Like, we get the same feeling you get if I was coaching at Duke, North Carolina versus Duke. You get the same feeling. And you're not doing it for the fans. You're doing it for the love of the game. You're doing it for the kids. And that's when I realized, like, I do love to coach. And I think that was important. And it was an enjoyable experience that year. One of the best parts, I didn't have a lot of media. So after a game, I'd go to the sports information director. I said, any requests? He's like, no. Okay. I go, we go get some food and watch film. It was kind of nice.
A little different at SMU.
And then SMU, I felt like that was a step in the direction of getting back, and always thought that could be a good job. But, there's some infrastructure that wasn't set up right. And I may have, taken a chance on a couple of kids that weren't ready to play. The culture in Dallas, was a little different. So, try to turn the corner. I think we started to turn the corner, and then after 6 years, they went in a different direction and hired Larry Brown, and he took them to the NCAA tournament. So, you get caught up in some situations, and luck comes into play. And but I appreciate the opportunity. We love Dallas. We love SMU. Made some great friends. And then, college coaching ran its course for me.
Mm-hmm. After you're done coaching, I know you kind of got back into broadcasting some, doing radio. You mentioned writing, and you said you are coaching, but kind of in a leadership way, a different way now. How have you kind of navigated your post-coaching career?
Yeah, it's been hard because I think at first I felt like I was falling off a cliff. And, your identity, and I talk to athletes, I talk to coaches. If you're going to be great at something, your identity has to be wrapped up in it, really. Mm-hmm. It's such a commitment. It's an identity. It's, you look at great players, great coaches, business people. So that's your identity. I mean, I was a basketball player since I was in 4th grade. I was a coach since I was 27. Basketball was my identity. And now it's not. Now it gets stripped. And you start to fall like, okay, who am I? How do I identify professionally? And so it was hard. Mm-hmm. And again, the depression can kick in. Like, who am I? What am I on this earth to do? And I always felt like teaching and coaching. And now it's just not basketball, it's executive leadership. All the things I learned from my bad experiences at North Carolina. Robin Roberts, who's Good Morning America, she has a great line. She says, make your mess your message. So in the book Rebound, I talk about the failures. I talk about my mistakes. I talk about the landmines I step on, trying to help others to avoid those landmines. So that's my mess. Losing my job at North Carolina is my message. And so I'm teaching and coaching, and it's fulfilling work. I get the same fulfillment like I have when I have a practice in basketball. The same feeling when I'm helped a guy with a jump shot, when I sit down with an executive and discuss some of the issues they're dealing with. And the good thing is I don't have any parents calling me after a game complaining about playing time.
Absolutely. I think it sounds like a fascinating book. I know you've kind of touched on some of the topics throughout this podcast, but for me, I definitely want to check it out. So I can go to your website. Where else can I grab a copy?
Yeah, you go to Amazon. Amazon's sold over about 3,300 copies. It was a bestseller on Amazon. So you can go to Amazon. You can go to the website, rebound-book.com. You can email me at coachmattdoherty@gmail.com if somebody wants it personalized. And so, yeah, it's gone well. It's been well received. And I kind of use it like a professor uses their textbooks in a class, because there's some, I think good material, and I try to tell the story, but then the second part is, here are some of the lessons learned that you may use in your life. And everyone's a leader, whether you are running a company, head basketball coach, a mother, a father, you're in your church community, you're in your community, even if you're, lower level at work, there are still times to lead. And I think that hopefully this book would, people who, especially basketball fans, would enjoy it.
What's next for you?
Well, the executive coaching, the Vistage, I've just started in November. So I have a team, and I want to build that team just like I did in North Carolina. You build a team, coach them, and I want to continue to do that. I have a radio show that I do on Thursdays with WBT and WFNZ in Charlotte. And I have a podcast that's coming out July 15th called Rebound. where I talk to a lot of people who have had success and then failed and then, rebounding from that. Some great guests, Ryan Leaf being one of them, Dan Jansen, Olympic skater, Danny Manning, who played at Kansas, coached at Wake Forest, John Beeline, Pat Croce. So some really good guests. So continue the leadership. I'm a coach. I'm coaching. I'm executive coach now, though.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you check the show notes so you can find out everything about Matt Doherty's book and how you can get a copy. Also, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't ever miss an episode of ACC Stars. Where are they now?